the idea of returning to a restaurant project, of returning to a life where I'm running a restaurant, I'm the head chef or whatever, it just seems completely not possible. And if I am asked today, what kind of restaurant would you like to open? If you were to open one restaurant right now in Copenhagen, what would you do? I would have no clue whatsoever. I wouldn't be able to say, this is the kind of restaurant that lacks in the city. With all honesty, if I would open Relæ today, I'm not even sure it would be successful. It's very hard for me to see what kind of restaurant to open today. Very difficult. There's a few elements that makes me think that. First of all, the restaurant industry in Copenhagen is now so saturated and it's completely filled with restaurants that have a high standard. And I think what we've gotten ourselves into in Copenhagen is that we've learned the backside of getting to the very highest international level is that all the restaurants go up to that level, which is a positive thing, but it's also become that everybody has lifted that because the clientele has been international, requiring a very high level, and I think it feels a little bit like we're left alone with the Danes now, because I find that the supply has been going up, and my sense is that the demand is going down. I think the peak attention level that Copenhagen got was around 2018. What then followed was COVID and its lockdowns. And with peak attention, I mean the perfect ratio between having just a little too little supply, but an enormous demand. People wanted to go to Copenhagen to eat in its restaurants, and many of us benefited from it very much. Me, more than anyone. Because my restaurants at the time, Relæ and Manfreds and Bæst and Mirabelle, were pumping. It was I find the best years we had. And I think that the peak was around 2018, going a little down into 19 and 20. And then because of the lockdowns, everything got really weird. Because the lockdowns in Denmark were subsidized in many ways, so that people essentially on the other side of it had more money than they had before, and all the restaurants were kept alive because of subsidies, and you could follow people, you could send them home, and you could get retributions from the state. What happened was that as the lockdown were lifted, 21 and 22 became outstanding years for everybody, because there was a lumping up effect of the cash and the money, and I guess the demand for great experiences, that within the next year or so, people just went at it and spent a lot of money in restaurants. We had great numbers, all of us. We had people spending more money on wine, people spending more money on experiences. That was great for everybody. But I still think that the general international demand was still in decline. And while we had the sense that this was great and everything was now peachy and people spend even more money than they used to, a lot of larger restaurant groups in Copenhagen went at it and started huge expansion strategies. Some restaurant chains now have 15, 20, 25, even 50 restaurants, which is unusual for us here. And they have completely saturated the mid-range. And then on top of that, because of the attention and the interest from outside that we got so used to, the idea of opening restaurants with Michelin Star ambitions really got pushed forward. On top of that, the Michelin Guide went on an expansion tactic like crazy that made so that I think we're closing in on 60 Michelin stars in Denmark. When Relæ got its Michelin Star in 2012, I believe that there was a total of 14 Michelin stars. So they have been devaluated, or devalued, or how you say it, and there's just so many restaurants with Michelin stars. And again, I find that the demand has been falling because now you have a landscape which is a ton of restaurants of a good, reasonable level at the top, at the Michelin Star restaurant. You have the chains that have saturated the mid-range, and then they are also trying to get into the Michelin Star stuff. And the tourists and the sort of idea of new Nordic based on Noma and the interest about these restaurants has fallen because it's Copenhagen just not the magnet that it once was. So after the reopening and people spending a lot of money, everything's in peachy. Supply went really up, but the demand was not telling us the truth, because the demand was up, so the supply went up, but the demand was not the truth. The demand was a lumping up of the COVID lockdown and the subsidies. So since it's been going like this, and what I sense today is when I talk to my colleagues and my peers that have restaurants, by far the majority are having a hard time. Particularly if you are in the sort of creative-ish range of high-end, fairly high-end. I think if you're at the very, 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 very top, where you have 2 Michelin stars or more, you're probably doing fine. If you are in the aspiring to have a Michelin star, fighting with 40 other restaurants in Copenhagen to have that spot, it's difficult. If you are within that range and you're trying to do things that are a little bit more interesting or whatever, Nordic and stuff like this, it's a hard time. You have to get to the mid-range where it's more comfy food, it's more Italian food, more trattoria, more osteria kind of style, or bistros. Those that have been capable of building a clientele and giving the impression of it not being too expensive, but somehow still provide the opportunity to spend money on wine, as a French restaurant can do and as an Italian restaurant can do, most easily, you can say, or most comfortably. Those are the ones that are doing the best. And if I am asked today, what kind of restaurant would you like to open? If you were to open one restaurant right now in Copenhagen, what would you do? I would have no clue whatsoever. I wouldn't be able to say, this is the kind of restaurant that lacks in the city. Because I don't think the city lacks any type of restaurant from a business point of view. If you're in Copenhagen, or if you have recently been to Copenhagen, is there anything that you think the city is missing? Is a kind of restaurant missing from a customer's point of view? Because, when I opened Relæ to begin with, in 2010, I had this incredibly strong dream. I had this vision. I had this sense that there was a type of restaurant that myself and people that would be like me at my age, I was 26, 27 at the time, would want and need. And the intention was to make a restaurant that was not fine dining, but it gave you a culinary experience that was fun and engaging and different and creative and, artistic to some level. So I felt strongly that this was something that the city lacked. And at the time, I wanted to open a restaurant. I started looking for the opportunity, investors and so on in 2009, ended up opening in 2010. But nobody was willing to invest in a restaurant at the time. And the whole idea that there would be such a thing as tourism coming to Copenhagen to eat in gastronomic restaurants was just unheard of. So there was no supply and the demand was not there, but the demand was about to come, because as we opened Relæ in 2010, it was in the following 2-3 years that Noma exploded and became world's best restaurant and stuff like that. So the sudden attraction towards Copenhagen was something that we could capitalize on, not just in the business sense, but in the culinary sense, because we were just going at it and we were so busy. And when Relæ received the Michelin Star in 2012, Relæ was offering a menu, 4 courses around $50, 325, 350 kroner. And when we received the Michelin Star, the booking system exploded. We received so many requests for bookings that we set an all-time record for the booking system, the digital booking system, called dinner booking at the time. We would have, on weekends, easily another restaurant fully booked just on the waiting list. We would have easy 60, 70 people on the waiting list. We would have people on the waiting list on Wednesdays and Thursdays, easy. There was not a day where we could not book out at the time. Now, as things progressed, we would suffer what everybody suffers, which is that you kind of get a little more busy towards the weekend than you do in the weekdays, which is it's much easier to run a restaurant where every day is the same. The difficult part is that you want people to, you get most guests in the weekends, and the weekends is also where you should somehow rotate a roster so that the staff gets weekends off at times. So it really complicates things when you essentially need more manpower in the weekend, and that's why you have less access to manpower. But that's always when you're the most busy. But at the time, we were kind of pretty busy all the time, and that was an enormously big advantage, because we could just roll for it. And we created a restaurant at the time that it didn't exist, and suddenly the demand exploded, because as people would come to Copenhagen and they would eat at Noma, they didn't have many alternatives. And Relæ offered a good alternative because it wasn't that similar to Noma either. It was different. So it was kind of appealing to the same audience, offering a different experience. Today, that same audience has so many options that, with all honesty, if I would open Relæ today, I'm not even sure it would be successful. It's very hard for me to see what kind of restaurant to open today. Very difficult. They're all over. You have the Italian sort of cheap end osteria, so many of them, so many, and they're all good. the Michelin Star restaurants, so many, I don't even know them. Like people ask me, have you been to this place? I don't know what it is. I have been so enmeshed in this industry for so many years, and still I'm not capable of keeping up with the new restaurants opening up. Now you also have this new wave of the super cheap restaurants, where, you know, from a French model, Parisian model, where you just make a huge brasserie that offers something very cheap and just needs a huge turnover. And, you know, what is that offering? I think what that is a synthetic. It's almost like AI slop for restaurants. What it does is it offers you an almost experience of eating out, because it's emulating the type of experience that you want in a restaurant, which is that you're seated. You know, there's a table and there's a vibe and there's mood and they serve you food. But in reality, it's not. It's like it's just the cheapest produce you can find, shoved down your face, and off you go. And it's supposed to be cheap, and you get out of there and you realize, well, value for money is not existing in this, because what I get is shit. I'm just trying to pretend that I've gone out for dinner, but I didn't. You know, just go out less. I wouldn't go to these restaurants for no reason. Like, not only, it's not a question of the money saved, but it's also time spent. There's an opportunity cost going to a restaurant that is supposed to be so cheap that it just doesn't give you. I mean, I would have a dinner at home, like eat takeaway, go out in the park. It's just not an experience worth the money. So things can be cheap and not worth it, obviously, and things can be expensive and not worth it. But things can be expensive, but expensive is only in relation to your compared to what you get. You know, do you get value for this or not? I don't appreciate those restaurants, because I simply don't appreciate the idea that you can offer something simply by having such a high volume that the price gets down so low. You can do that to some extent, which I think I also did with my own restaurants. Both Relæ and Manfreds wanted to do several seatings and so on, but in proportion, you know, you can, we can seat you for 2.5 hours and give you a good experience, and then we can seat this table twice, and therefore we can offer that if we get a little up tempo. But then you can be like, okay, we can seat this table 4 times, and you only have 1 hour, and just get it thrown in your face. Now, if that was a small bistro where things were handheld and people were just going crazy, I would love it. But when it's just a huge factory that, you know, because it can buy tons of eggs every month, then it gets a good price on the shittiest eggs it can find. I mean, what is the point? It's pretending to be a restaurant. It's not a restaurant.